Okay, so picture this, right? June 2026. The SEC, drops its quarterly bulletin. It's like 3 pages in, footnote 4, and it just says 6 words: algorithmic systemic risk. That's it. No big announcement, no televised signing, nothing.
Wow. Just 6 words? Tucked away?
Yeah. But within a week, 3 major banks revised their model risk frameworks. 6 months later, that tiny footnote, Marcus, it's showing up in a Second Circuit opinion. 12 months later, it's full-blown enforcement architecture. It's wild.
So no vote, no bill, no actual hearing, just boom. Regulation.
Exactly. And here's the kicker, the part that should really bother us. Capital is already pricing this in, like right now, as we're talking. Kalshi, their FED-AI-REG contract, that's like US Fed to issue formal AI risk guidance by year-end, it's sitting at 0.62. But the institutional narrative, what the Wall Street Journal or Financial Times are saying, it's pricing the same outcome at roughly 0.20. The gap is 42 points.
That gap? I mean, that's literally the entire conversation we're about to have, isn't it? And by the end, I'm hoping you can give us like 3 signals we can actually watch this quarter. 3 things that'll tell us if this regulatory regime is actually migrating successfully, or if it's just hollowing out into something that looks like governance, but isn't.
Oh, absolutely. Because the surface read is like capital's ahead of the narrative. That's the easy one, right? We're going to push way past that, though.
Okay, 2 quick pieces of context before we dive in anywhere. First, this isn't gridlock. It's not paralysis or anything. The system is moving. It's just moving on a channel almost nobody's actually watching. Second, and this is where it gets a little uncomfortable, even if capital is right and regulation lands, the question of whether that regulation actually binds anyone, that's a question no market really knows how to ask.
Yeah, that's the real fork in the road, isn't it? And we are totally walking into it, whether we recognize it or not. So let's start with what this price is actually, saying. What's the mechanism here?
Right, so what's this price telling us? Here's the mechanism. Forget Congress, honestly. Congress is like theater on this issue. The capital position assumes administrative channel regulation. That's the term. We're talking executive orders, Fed guidance, SEC bulletins, OCC model risk frameworks, Treasury financial stability framings, all that stuff.
Translation, the agencies whose mandate covers financial stability, they act unilaterally when a sector gets large enough to actually threaten that stability. They don't ask for legislative consent. They just issue guidance. Guidance becomes precedent. Precedent becomes enforceable. It's like this really quiet but powerful creep.
And the leverage is totally structural. A major bank, for example, can't afford to lose access to the Fed's discount window, right? A public company simply cannot survive an SEC investigation. So when one of these bulletins drops, compliance changes inside the week. The legal architecture, it gets built super quietly in that gap between hearings, the ones everyone's watching.
I want to stop you there, though, because I think the framing you just used is doing work I don't think we've really examined yet.
Oh, go on.
Okay, so the supplied analysis, it treats this as regulation is happening through a different door. Capital sees it, narrative doesn't. End of insight. But I think that misses the load-bearing assumption entirely.
Which is?
That regulation is regulation. The 0.62 print, it's pricing the existence of a rule. It's not pricing whether the rule is legitimate. It's not pricing whether the rule survives a court challenge. It's not pricing whether anyone actually enforces it once it's issued, Capital can be exactly right about the existence of guidance and exactly wrong about whether that guidance actually functions as a constraint. That's the real disconnect, I think.
That's a real distinction. Yeah.
Right? So try this. A speed limit sign and a guardrail. They both produce the same behavior in the moment. You don't drive off the cliff either way, but only one of them is something you can argue with, vote against, sue over, repeal. The other one is, it's just there. Administrative guidance, that's the guardrail. It works. You literally cannot run for office against it.
Okay, I'll take the steel man here. The reason capital price is 0.62 isn't like naive optimism or anything. It's pattern recognition, right?
Every previous administrative channel regulatory wave, Sarbanes-Oxley enforcement, Basel III implementation, Dodd-Frank rulemaking, it's followed the exact same trajectory. Guidance, then precedent, then enforcement, then operational law. The capital position, it's the market saying, hey, we've seen this movie before, we know how it ends. Don't you think?
Fair. And that does hold, actually. What it doesn't hold against, though, is the question of what's different this time. The previous waves, they were guidance over institutions, right? This wave is guidance over algorithmic actors that literally have no human accountability layer. The compliance officer who used to translate that bulletin into bank policy, they're like being recomposed out of the workflow. The job just isn't there in the same way.
That's where this stops being a story about regulation and really starts being a story about something stranger, I think.
Exactly. And stay with that recomposition idea for a second, because there's a connection here nobody is making, and it really matters. It's foundational.
Lay it out for us.
The cognitive strain conversation and the legitimacy conversation, they are the same phenomenon at different scales. They're not two adjacent problems like we often think. They are actually one problem. Seriously.
Walk me through the mechanism there.
Okay, so a white-collar worker managing an AI system, they experience rules that just change continuously, right? The optimization function tunes its own parameters. The worker, they can't audit the model, they can't predict its behavior week to week, and they absolutely can't appeal its decisions to anyone who can override them. That's the cognitive strain.
Right, I get that.
Now, zoom out. A citizen under guidance-based governance, they experience regulation that changes continuously too. The agency tunes its own bulletins. The citizen can't audit the rulemaking. They can't predict enforcement priorities quarter to quarter. And they definitely can't appeal decisions to anyone with electoral accountability, because the agency head is appointed, not elected, and the bulletin was just a footnote nobody voted on. It's the same exact mechanism, just a different domain. Do you know what I mean?
And the connection to project from is what?
Authority is becoming a tunable parameter on both sides. Inside the corporation, the algorithm tunes its own rules. Inside the state, the agency tunes its own guidance. The deliberative body, like Congress, the boardroom committee, the human review chain, that used to be the boundary condition, the thing that made the rule external to the optimization function. That's what's like totally collapsing, Marcus. It's going away.
Let me project from this then. 5 to 10 years out, 3 things become super visible, I think. 1, accountability becomes post hoc and judicial, not deliberative. Courts will adjudicate guidance after harm, not before. The deliberative phase, it moves from should we have this rule to did the rule we already have apply to what just happened. That's huge.
That's already happening, for sure.
2, the population of decision-bearing humans shrinks. Not because there are fewer decisions, but because the decisions get made by systems that just can't be voted on. And 3, voting itself becomes downstream. You vote for legislators who oversee agencies whose guidance was already issued and already operational. The vote happens after the rule is already there.
Okay, pressure test that projection. You're describing trend extrapolation unless you name the mechanism that drives each step, though.
The mechanism is institutional survival. Every legacy oversight body, Congress, corporate boards, professional licensing boards, they all face the same problem. The thing they're supposed to oversee moves faster than their deliberative cycle, They have 2 options: move faster, which means abandoning deliberation, or stay slow and become ceremonial. Both options end the same way, Marilyn. The deliberative function dies.
That's a defensible mechanism. I'll grant it, definitely.
So the lateral connection, the big one, is the cognitive strain isn't just like a side effect of AI deployment. It's a leading indicator of constitutional displacement. When you see workers describing their relationship to enterprise AI in the language of helplessness, you are watching in miniature the relationship citizens are about to have with the state. It's chilling, actually.
And no one is pricing it because no instrument even exists to price it. The Kalshi book has a contract for will the Fed issue guidance. It does not have a contract for will the guidance be obeyed. It does not have a contract for will the people subject to the guidance feel like they had any say in it. Those questions, they literally have no market,
I want to push on the 62 itself, actually, because I think we owe the listener a stress test on that number.
Oh, do it, please.
The whole capital leads narrative thesis assumes the .62 print is directional, right? That capital is making a direct bet on the outcome. But there's another reading of it.
Insurance.
Exactly, right? Hedge fund managers might assess the actual probability at, say, .30 and still pay .62 because the payoff asymmetry on the no regulation side is just brutal for AI-exposed portfolios. In which case, the entire capital leads narrative by 4 to 6 months thesis just, collapses. Capital isn't leading anything. Capital is just buying flood insurance, and the price tells you nothing about whether the flood is actually coming.
That is a real challenge, actually. And the discriminator, it really matters here.
The discriminator, and I think it holds, is the price behavior on no news weeks. You know, if the position is pure insurance, the contract should compress toward the narrative price every week the news doesn't move. The premium just decays. But if the position is directional, the price holds steady or even rises through the news vacuum because the conviction isn't tied to specific events. It's a belief, you know?
And the actual behavior, what's it doing?
Consolidation at .62 with steady accumulation across May. That's not insurance unwinding. That's directional money sitting on a thesis. It really is.
Okay, I'll grant the steelman then. Capital is directional. The thesis survives.
But
it survives in a refined form. And the refinement, Marcus, that's the whole point of this episode. Capital is directional about what exactly?
About guidance being issued.
Not about guidance being binding, not about guidance surviving court challenge, not about guidance being followed once it's there. The market, it's pricing the existence of a rule. The constitutional question, does the rule operate as constraint or as ceremonial code, that has no instrument. None. Anywhere. That's the deeper void here, I think.
So when I say capital leads narrative on regulation,
You're correct, but you're answering a smaller question. Capital leads narrative on the existence of regulatory instruments, not their legitimacy or durability. The cognitive strain layer is where that distinction lives. A rule truly binds only if people have the bandwidth to notice it and respond. We are systematically depleting that bandwidth, Marcus.
So the .62 prices the rule's issuance, but not what will still pay attention to make it binding. The most important signal is the one no instrument prices, the moment guidance is issued but stops getting followed.
Exactly. Law becomes legacy code, invoked in ceremony but ignored in practice. That population of engaged citizens is shrinking, below the metric. The .62 tells us capital believes a rule will exist, but its binding power depends on whether enough people still do the interior work to recognize it. The squared stone holds the wall because of what was done to it before it was placed, not because somebody approved it after.
That's really real.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm hearing you, Marilyn, the real risk isn't just regulation moving through unseen channels, but its binding power eroding as human capacity to engage with it shrinks.
Precisely, Marcus. We're seeing a fundamental decoupling. The form of law is produced, but its function as a legitimate constraint, understood and accepted by those it governs, is tenuous. It's a crisis of civic engagement, expressed as regulatory fatigue.
That's unsettling. What's the one signal beyond the market price that tells us if this legacy code risk is materializing?
The crucial signal will be widespread, uncoordinated noncompliance, facing no credible enforcement because the system lacks human bandwidth to even identify it. It's when the guardrail is there, but everyone just drives around it.
Something to watch for. Marilyn, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you. Before we wrap up, a big thank you to our viewers. If you found this valuable, please like, comment, share, or subscribe to help grow our network.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marcus.